Losing you makes the narcissist suffer for the rest of his life. Imagine this: the narcissist presents a new image to the world. Glamorous, confident, completely untethered from your absence. But behind closed doors, you should know the truth. Losing you doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like a wound that never heals. In this video, we'll explore striking psychological insights that reveal why a narcissist's suffering extends far beyond the breakup. Not because they loved you the way you deserve to be loved, but because losing you shattered control they never admitted to needing. And now, decades later, they carry that void with devastating consequences. If you ever wonder what they're really thinking after you've chosen yourself, stay with me. Today we go deep into the emotional aftermath, into the torment most narcissists never talk about, and we'll map it all based on trusted psychological patterns. By the end, you'll see not just how they suffer, but why your departure continues to haunt their life's journey. And if you're ready to understand your power, the power of leaving, you'll also discover why your healing matters more than you know. Stay until the last word. Psychologists identify several overlapping emotional stages narcissists go through after truly losing someone they took for granted. Each stage exposes an emotional spiral far more painful than any public breakup narrative. 1. The illusion of indifference crumbles. At first, they project indifference. They post glamorous pictures. They might even flaunt new relationships to convince themselves and everyone else that they're thriving. But behind the facades of selfies and stories, the absence of you echoes like a silent alarm. They lie to themselves to maintain their pride, but their nights tell a different story. They wake up in emptiness, scrolling, replaying your words, watching old photos, hoping to find a connection they pretended not to need. 2. They lose their anchor and their identity. You represented more than a partner. You were their emotional anchor. They leaned on your validation. They thrived on the drama, the tension, the unpredictability. When you left and didn't come back, they lost their compass. A narcissist's self-image is built on reflection. They depend on others to feel real. And without you, that reflection shattered. No praise, no attention, no conflict. You become the center of a void they never prepared for. 3. Guilt flares and haunts their nights. While narcissists rarely apologize, the emotional aftershocks of guilt can be unbearable. Losing you wasn't part of their script. They didn't expect boundaries to persist. They didn't wait for your moving on. And when they realize that they're the reason you chose distance and you're thriving, they can't escape it. That guilt doesn't lead to growth. It festers. It's not clean. It's raw and unspoken. And at 2 a.m., it translates into a gnawing ache they don't know how to soothe. For the unfinished narrative keeps playing. Unlike healthy breakups, narcissistic departures are often left incomplete. Instead of closure, they get abandonment. Instead of reconciliation, they get silence. And that silence becomes a loop in their mind. What did I do wrong? Why didn't they come back? It eats away because narcissists rely on control. You walking away unilaterally robbed them of their narrative end. And when control wavers, suffering begins. 5. Replacement partners can't fill the gap. They may seek new supply, someone to admire, to validate, to entertain a relationship circle. But that person doesn't leave. You did, and that makes all the difference. Post-breakup relationships look like opportunities until they realize a new person can't recreate what you had. Emotional unpredictability, intellectual challenge, boundary resistance. When those differences become apparent, the relationship turns shallow. The narcissist resents both the new person and, silently, you for exposing their emotional dependence. Let's dive deeper. It's natural to wonder, how can someone who caused so much pain end up suffering more than the person who walked away with dignity? The truth is rooted in the narcissist psychology. Their suffering isn't a fleeting wound. It becomes a permanent shadow haunting their every move, their every relationship, and ultimately, their whole life. Psychologists recognize this as a core feature of narcissistic personality dynamics. Once someone who truly mattered leaves and won't come back, the narcissist's entire identity starts to crumble from inside. 6. Memory becomes an inescapable prison. They may try to erase you from their life, but your image won't go away. Every scent, every song, Every time they pass familiar landmarks, your memory floods their senses. Unlike healthy people, narcissists don't integrate memories through emotional resolution or acceptance. Instead, memories become emotional triggers, haunting reminders of control lost, influence gone, narrative broken. You become a ghost in their everyday life, uninvited but impossible to dismiss. 7. They struggle to form genuine bonds. Because they depended on you to regulate their emotions, they struggle to create meaningful connections afterward. Every subsequent relationship feels cold or burns out fast. They crave intensity, yet fear intimacy. Their identity was built around attention, but you taught them attention isn't enough. Now, they can't move forward but don't know how to sustain anything real. They alternate between chasing surface-level validation and dull withdrawal. 8. Emotional exhaustion sets in. Sustaining their facade of confidence, charisma, and invincibility becomes exhausting. Maintaining public success, social performance, on top of managing their pain, wears them down. Psychologists refer to this as emotional fatigue, the chronic burnout from constantly running a high-stakes emotional show without rest. They may drink more, work more, entertain more, anything to avoid the empty space you left. But the avoidance backfires, deepening fatigue and disconnection inside them. 9. Life without you feels directionless. You were the center of their emotional map, even if unconsciously. Without you, every path forward feels aimless. They may chase new projects, new interests, new partners, but nothing holds meaning. They can't measure their worth anymore. Facing life without your narrative becomes terrifying, not because you define them, but because they realize they never defined themselves. That existential void becomes a slow-building suffering stretching into years. 10. Paranoia over relevance. Psychologists call it narcissistic fear of insignificance. They need to be seen, remembered, influential. When you leave and don't return, that fear becomes acute. And exposure to public indifference, new faces who never knew them, or social circles that move on, triggers panic. They sense they're becoming irrelevant. Their public image, their charm, their name, they're all threatened. And so every like, every comment, every mention becomes essential, desperately grasped like life rafts. Let's go deeper. What happens when a narcissist's suffering isn't momentary, but becomes their permanent emotional climate? When life moves on, and their internal wound continues to bleed. Psychologists note that this long-term suffering reshapes every corner of their existence, often without anyone realizing. 11. Every milestone becomes a reminder. As years pass, other people build memories with milestones, graduations, birthdays, anniversaries. Without them, for a narcissist, those personal landmarks feel hollow without you by their side. They may attend life events, start families, climb career ladders, but everything is threaded through one missing presence. And even on days meant to bring joy, that presence is conspicuous by its silence. 12. Their mirror cracks further over time. Remember, narcissists rely on emotional mirrors, the person who reflects their greatness. Losing you cracked that mirror. With every passing year, the cracks deepen. New relationships, social media validation, public praise, they pale in comparison to the mirror you provided. The more they chase substitutes, the more irreparable that original mirror fracture becomes. 13. They hide behind new masks. In an attempt to survive, they create new versions of themselves. Maybe a new career identity, a drastic image makeover, hyperactive social persona. But these masks don't heal, they conceal. And underneath, the wound of losing you pulses. They become restless, needing constant reinvention, always afraid someone will see the emptiness beneath the facade. 14. Authenticity becomes impossible. Their fear of irrelevance and exposure intersect. When you leave, you expose their emotional poverty. To avoid that shame, they embrace inauthenticity. They manipulate, control perceptions, stage their lives, and avoid vulnerability. What might appear impressive from the outside is emotionally hollow inside, and over time, the gap between performance and the person grows unbearable. 15. Anxiety and internal turmoil rise. Studies show sustained narcissistic injury leads to anxiety, depression, Psychosomatic symptoms: insomnia, headaches, chest pain, without clear physical cause. Their emotional armor fractures, yet they won't seek help. They endure chronic psychological pain, not admitting source. All because losing you cracked their emotional shell, and the wound never fully closes. 16. Patterns repeat in new relationships. Every new relationship unearths the same cycle. Idealize, devalue, discard. Patterns loop faster due to urgency to fill your absence. Soon, they repeat the cycle you escaped. The new partner becomes a placeholder, eventually a target of their unresolved pain. As they subconsciously punish their own loss through devaluing new people, toxic patterns persist, and the wound stays open. 17. Guilt becomes everlasting. Though they rarely confront guilt, it becomes a shadow self. Not guilt that resolves, but guilt that seeps into personality. Resentment, regret disguised as anger, nostalgia disguised as nostalgia. It never heals. And they can't bury it in distraction. It's woven into how they define themselves when no one's watching. 18. Other people begin to sense it. Discerning observers, friends, family, future partners, often notice something off. A distance, a sadness behind the swagger, moment of inexplicable isolation. They see a soul that's lived many stories, but never really healed. That hollow confidence betrays unresolved sorrow and often drives others away, fueling deeper isolation and reigniting old wounds from losing you. 19. The false narrative fights back. To stay sane, they rewrite history. You are unstable, unrealistic, ungrateful. You left them. They claim victory to deflect vulnerability. But this narrative only deepens a wound. It's a form of denial. And because denial never eradicates pain, the narcissist continues reliving and fighting the memory of your departure, even as they proclaim they never minded. 20. The ageless suffering endures. As the years pass and the spotlight begins to fade, they grow older, not with grace or reflection, but with a quiet, hollow ache that becomes harder to ignore. The celebrations they once thrived on become fewer, and the applause that once fed their ego grows fainter. Even if they're surrounded by admirers, followers, or people who still see only their surface, there's a silence underneath it all that never fully quiets. It's the silence left behind by your absence. The wound of losing you doesn't heal with time. It lingers, deep and unspoken, woven into fabric of their aging days. They may appear composed, perhaps even successful by society's standards. But behind closed doors, when performances end and the masks fall, they're left with a space inside that nothing else can fill. That space echoes with everything they never said, with every moment they thought you'd come back, and realize you wouldn't. It's not just nostalgia that haunts them. It's a slow, steady ache. One that pulses every time they hear a song that reminds them of you, every time they scroll through their contacts and pause for a second too long at your name. Even if they never press call, they may never speak about it. Not to their friends, not to their new partner, not even to themselves in the mirror, but the truth is always there. It's in the quiet mornings as they sip their coffee, lost in thought, feeling a void they can't name. It's in the long, restless nights when they lie awake, staring at a dark ceiling or picking up an old phone, scrolling through old texts or photos they swore they deleted, hoping maybe for a message, a sign, anything to make them feel like they still matter to you. But the message never comes. The silence stays. And in that silence, they are reminded again and again that you're gone and nothing to do will ever bring back what they lost. You need to understand something deeply. When you walk away, it didn't just sting them in the moment. It carved a lasting mark they'll carry for the rest of their life. The impact wasn't fleeting or circumstantial. It was permanent. It wasn't just about losing someone. They've lost a person who knew them better than they knew themselves. And they suffer not because they loved you the way emotionally whole people love, but because your presence held up a mirror to their illusions and your absence shattered them. The illusion of control, the illusion of superiority, the illusion that they could play with love and still remain untouched. All of that crumbled the moment you left and never looked back. No matter how much they try to distract themselves with performances, external validation, shallow relationships, or self-praise, none of it can truly fill the emotional crater left behind. They may parade around in front of others, pretending to be unbothered, pretending to have won. But inside, there's a silence that grows louder by the day, a void that can't be silenced by noise, can't be patched up with replacements. Because nothing compares to someone who saw their truest self and still tried to love them until the damage became too much to bear. Here's something many don't realize. Your decision to leave didn't just save you. It revealed them. It wasn't just a boundary. It was a mirror, one that reflected back everything they didn't want to admit. You didn't leave out of weakness. You left out of wisdom, strength, and clarity. And that reflection, that's what they've been trying to erase ever since. But it lingers. Your silence speaks louder than words. Your distance louder than confrontation. And every time they try to rewrite the story, to reduce you to a mistake or a phase, they're confronted by a truth that refuses to fade. They lost something real. You were never the wound they wanted to believe you were. You were the mirror, the revelation, the awakening, not the one they asked for, but the one that life gave them. And now, they carry that with them every day, whether they admit it or not. Your strength, your clarity, your refusal to play their game. That's what haunts them. That's what they can't undo. Thank you for taking the time to listen. If these words help bring you a sense of peace, of validation, or of strength, then hold that close. You've earned it. Share this message with others who might still be carrying the weight of someone else's confusion. And as you continue your journey of healing, do it with pride. Because while they are trapped in a cycle of regret and self-deception, you are living in truth, growth, and freedom. Their suffering lingers in the silence you left behind, and your healing continues forward, bold, unapologetic, and completely unbound.